Well, hi everyone. I wanted to record another video on the question of INFJ self-esteem in general, partly because I think that this is a topic that is not as well understood as I would like it to be. It's true that I have approached it before, but at the same time, based on the comments I read, because I read all the comments even when I don't really have the leisure or the time to answer all of them, I'm persistently under the impression that the way in which a lot of INFJs understand this whole concept and how it plays a role in their life is not exactly going to be conducive to their flourishing. Okay, let me see if I can protect myself a little bit more from the light. Yeah. So why am I saying this, and why am I always returning to this question of self-esteem? Okay, well, let's just break it to you guys. This might be a surprise to you. For some others, it probably won't be a surprise. But in fact, it turns out that when you consider all the phenomena of mental health, self-esteem is like one of the cornerstones. If you have good, strong, solid self-esteem, you're not going to fear anything. And you're going to be able to manage to get through a lot, okay? In fact, someone who has like very solid self-esteem, it's pretty much known that they will deal with trauma much better. They will deal with separation anxiety much better. They will deal with all forms of anxiety of performance better. They are less likely to experience crisis of meaning. So self-esteem is something really fundamental. And it is true that to a large extent it's formed early in life, and it's difficult to really have an influence over later on in life. But it's just because it's difficult doesn't mean it's impossible, and it should really be tied with self-acceptance. And you see, that's where the whole INFJ angle to this topic sort of becomes relevant, because in the comments that I get from people, I'll often, I'm still seeing a lot of people say something like, either they say, well, I don't feel great about myself because the world doesn't understand me. Okay, so that's one way. Or another thing they might say is, I don't feel good about myself because I haven't got to the point where my potential is realized enough to be understood by the world and finally recognized, pardon me, for my value. Okay? So in both cases, these comments are saying my value is not being recognized. In one case, it's the fault of the world. In the other case, the fault, so to speak, or the responsibility is directed toward the person a bit more. Because they believe that if they can reach that potential, either in terms of the depth of their vision, the influence of their vision, or their ability to translate their vision into something understandable by people that makes a difference, then they'll be appreciated. And of course, self-esteem is going to kind of fix itself, or at least improve significantly as a result. Now, what I want to say to you, right, guys, is that and that's where it might hurt, maybe it won't hurt, but we'll see. Regardless of whether the world changes or you change and the world sees you differently and showers you in praise or recognition or validation, you're basically fully acknowledged as someone of great depth or value or whatever it might be, or just someone who has something to contribute. Zero impact on your self-esteem. It will not impact your self-esteem. So if your self-esteem is shit, it will remain shit. What you will enjoy is a kind of narcissistic, titillating feeling that is kind of like it's almost like you have an open wound and you consume opium. Okay, so you'll forget, you'll be like having a great time, you'll forget about the wound and the pain. But when you take drugs, the effects always wear off after a while. And once they wear off, you'll be back to being in pain. And that's exactly what will happen because you're not addressing the core issue, the wound itself, okay? The causes. So self-esteem is not to be confused with the ego ideal. And too many INFJs I've seen tend to think that self-esteem and ego ideal are kind of the same thing, like this ego ideal being what I would like to be, the personification of what I would like to be in the future, which is something that is very important in INFJ life because it's, first of all, it's a projection of the mind into the future, which is very resonant with the way INFJs function. It's also a way for INFJs to deal with feelings of inadequacy and not fitting in by convincing themselves that they can work toward a better version of themselves. Now, having an ego ideal is good because, it's inevitable, but it's good because it does spur desire to progress in life, get toward a goal. It does good things to your dopamine level. It does good things to giving meaning to what you're doing and to kind of give a narrative, a progressive narrative to your life trajectory. But at the same time, that's not self-esteem. Self-esteem is tied to self-acceptance because self-esteem is really about the here and the now of what you're like. It's not about, if in the future I achieve this, then I will be likable. I mean, essentially, if you're reasoning underneath the surface words, it's kind of like, well, right now I'm not lovable, but if I realize my vision, if I do this and that, if I influence these people, if I help these people, then I get to a stage where I'm lovable. You're reasoning exactly like the young child who perceives maybe a lack of affection from their mother or their father, justified or not, but that's what they perceive. Some young children are built to be more sensitive to these things. They perceive that. They're angry. They feel aggressive toward their caregiver, but it's very dangerous because they're so helpless, they need the caregiver. So they find it much easier to redirect their aggression on themselves and say, it's my fault, but if I get better, mommy will show me more affection. All I have to do is to be a better boy. Okay, that's the very same mechanism with a lot of INFJs, where there's this idea that the self as it is, immersed in time, having an everyday life like everyone else, having probably a pretty banal job most of the time, having mostly been, kind of normal, trivial conversations like most people, who experiences moments of ecstasy and self-exploration that are profound and are kind of uniquely them for sure. But most of the time, life is kind of mundane. And if you cannot stand this idea, that's because you're thinking in terms of, if I get better, I will be lovable. So what you need really is not achievements. Your achievements are not going to make you more lovable. What you need is love right now. Love of yourself, and ideally, if you can, love of a significant other who loves you for who you are, but not for your achievements, either past, present, or future, which is why it's often said, if through self-exploration, self-work, maybe reading my works, better therapy and analysis, you can learn to love who you are in your essence right now because you are lovable as such. That's great. And if you can be with someone who looks at you for who you are, through all the, warts and all, as they say, and shows you love and reliability and care and affection, it does huge things to your self-esteem, and that will improve you in every aspect of life. So forget about the achievements for 1 second and remember this. Okay, guys? Now, I have written a couple books on the INFJ, so if you'd like to hear more about how to find meaning, purpose, and value in a flourishing INFJ life in the world now, you should read The Infinite Soul. Check the reviews. The link is below. INFJ Life in the Modern World. And it argues essentially that authenticity and adaptation, the perfect mix of these two things, is the key, right? It's difficult to achieve and the world can be a scary place, but this book guides you. It's helped people, so check it out. As well as its prequel, The Ecstatic Soul, which is the deepest investigation of the INFJ personality, the INFJ mind in particular, what it's like to be an INFJ, what's it like to have the mind of an INFJ, what happens inside our mind. If you want to know more, there's no deeper book than this, a new look at the INFJ personality. The link is below as well, and as you can see, the two books go well together. And finally, guys, don't forget that I could not do without your support on Patreon. So there's a link below, either to Patreon or one-off PayPal, if you would like to support the channel so I can keep going with producing, you know, pretty much quality videos every day for you. So it is the lifeblood of my channel. You get access to some cool perks as well. Access to our Discord server, the Fourfold. I'm there every day, pretty much. You get access to bonus video content every 2 weeks and other perks too. It's a great community. You help me. So hopefully you consider it. Talk to you next time, guys. Bye-bye.